Hello lovely people, welcome back to another book chat. Okay, so I was going to do my normal thing of piling all my books on my lap, but that was very nearly a disaster with the Neil Gaiman books, so I think we won't do that this time, because this time I'm going to talk about Stephen King. I got into Stephen King books when I was quite young. I think I was still at the age where I was just sort of transitioning into more adult books, and Mum used to read them before me just to make sure that they weren't too horrifically, graphically violent, and she was too worried about the sex side of things. It was just she didn't want me reading about people having their heads ripped off and things, which obviously, you know, this happens in Stephen King. However, the first Stephen King book I happened to read, I don't have a copy of it, and that was The Eye of the Dragon, which, if you haven't read it, it's quite different. It is, I believe, if I remember right, he actually wrote it for his kids. It was a story for his kids when they were young. So it was, although it was, you know, filled with the normal thing, people picking the noses and that sort of stuff, which you tend to expect in Stephen King, it wasn't too violent or too gory or too scary. So Mum was like, yeah, that's fine, you know, I don't know why you'd want to read about that sort of stuff, but off you go. And I think the next book I picked up was It, when I was about 13, and yeah, I didn't sleep for about 2 weeks. That was fairly scary. And I think the only other book that's ever done that to me actually was Dan Simmons' Summer of Night, which I read about a couple of years later, and it was the same thing. I had to turn off the light and then jump into bed because I was so convinced something was hiding under the bed. And I still remember after reading it, we were staying, we'd actually moved from New Zealand back up to Tonga, and we were staying at Dad was rebuilding a friend's resort after a fire. And so we were staying in one of the little farleys, one of the little bungalows, and I had one all to myself, and I was absolutely terrified because I was convinced I could see Pennywise standing in the corner, and I ended up running through the night, and pounding on the door of my parents' farley, "Oh, let me in, the cloud's going to get me." So yeah, Mum probably did regret letting me read Stephen King, but it was too late by then. Anyway, I used to read him very obsessive. I used to read a lot of horror, Stephen King, James Herbert, bit of Dean Koontz, till I got a bit, all the heroes seemed to have piercing blue eyes and things like that, and I got a bit fed up. And yeah, so I read them exclusively for a very long time, and I sort of went away, and I've come back again recently, and I've absolutely loved the Mr. Mercedes series. And I don't know if you've read these ones. They're all in reverse order because the size is all wrong, which is very annoying. Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and End of Watch. And those were absolutely fantastic, and I really enjoyed them. And if you're not normally a Stephen King fan, because you don't like the supernatural side of things so much, I'd really recommend them just as good detective stories. When it gets to the last one, yeah, you start getting a little bit more of a supernatural edge coming into it, but it's quite minor, certainly compared to some of his other books. And the characters are so engaging. Bill Hodges is wonderful, Holly is wonderful, Jerome's wonderful, they're all amazing. I love the characters in these books, they're awesome. And that's something he does very well, is he really sets up that sympathy for the characters, and you know, I think he does it best with kids really growing up, and that's why It was such a strong story. And the one I've just finished reading, 11/22/63. It's huge. I kind of, having not read him for a while, I've forgotten just what big books he writes. And it was really good. It certainly wasn't a fast-moving story, but because it was well written, you just kept sort of going along with it, and it was really interesting. And it is a time travel story, and there's all these lovely links as well. There's links to Derry, there's links to It, there's lots of little bits, which is another thing he's very good at, is all his books, there's these little breadcrumbs and little threads that connect to other books, even if they're not entirely obvious. So fantastic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it was my favourite of his that I've read at all, but it was a really good read. And if you have a really, really long flight or anything like that, I'd take it, because you'll only need the one book. Even for me, I think this would have probably got me all the way back to New Zealand. But yeah, anyway. So, those are my latest Stephen Kings. Obviously there's far too many of them to go through, because even though I have a very small collection at the moment, there's still quite a lot on the shelves there. So, let me know, are you a Stephen King fan? What's your favourite of his books? And yeah, And also, yeah, Dan Simmons, have you read Summer of Night? What book really freaked you out when you were a kid? Were you into horror? Did you enjoy sort of scaring yourself like that? If so, let me know in the comments, and yeah, it'd be lovely to hear from you. Thanks very much.